Okay, so now we are on to topic 3 of the lecture, and just to remind you what that is, we're going to look at old versus new biomass. I came across this Schramski paper. I think it was sent to me by a colleague, Steve Korick. Steve is Ernie Korick's son. Ernie is now deceased, but Ernie was the regional president for Champion International. Champion was one of the biggest paper products producers in the country, perhaps still is. I think their headquarters are in Georgia. I've actually visited the headquarters. They make a lot of paper there, and the only reason I was there is Champion was actually sponsoring the United States rowing team back in the day. So I had a slight connection with them back in the 90s, but Korick, like I said, his father was, in charge of a lot of the lumber industry here in Montana, and is also a real estate agent in Montana, and would really like to see Montana kind of stay looking like Montana instead of a bald, scorched lunar surface, right? So I think it's in everyone's economic interest to have the fish swimming and the deer and the elk frolicking and the skies blue and all that. So Steve came at this from a couple different angles, but he shared this paper with me, which is not the most uplifting document you'll ever read, but on the other hand, there's nothing wrong with it. I mean, it's irrefutable, and unless we come up with some other bizarre, transformative model of the universe, this paper, which by the way is published in the Proceeding of the National Academy of Sciences, one of the most highly regarded publications. I've tried to have things published here before, and they will reject you in a half hour. They don't mess around. If you're not kind of part of their little network and dialed in, they'll just say, go elsewhere. So this is very high quality, very high impact paper. So I'll read through the abstract, just in case the font is too small. It says, the Earth is a chemical battery where over evolutionary time, with a trickle charge of photosynthesis using solar energy, billions of tons of living biomass were stored in forests and other ecosystems and vast reserves of fossil fuels. In just the past few hundred years, humans extracted exploitable energy from these living and fossilized biomass fuels to build the modern industrial, technological, informational, there's your informational, there was my paper. Heard it, right? Okay. Economy. Oh, and I put dollars in my paper too. I'll show you that in a second too. So I wrote this before I read this paper. To grow our population to more than 7 billion and to transform the biogeochemical, that's the biosphere we were just talking about a second ago, the biogeochemical cycles and biodiversity of the Earth. This rapid discharge of the Earth's store of organic energy fuels the human domination of the biosphere, including conversion of natural habitats to agricultural fields and the resulting loss of native species, emission of carbon dioxide and the resulting climate and sea level change, and use of supplemental nuclear, hydro, wind, and solar energy sources. The laws of thermodynamics governing the trickle charge and rapid discharge, that's your 10 million to 1 ratio. We're at minute 2.5. That's also in my paper that just came out. Minute 2.5 of a 5-minute party at the end of a 100-year-old person's life. And rapid discharge of the Earth's battery are universal and absolute. The Earth is only temporarily poised to a quantifiable distance from the thermodynamic equilibrium of outer space. What's that mean? It's, well, we're living in this nice little cocoon-like bubble with our nice greenhouse gas effect sort of keeping us warm above the 3.7 Kelvin temperature that's only 60 miles away from us, or a few hundred miles away from us. Although this distance from equilibrium is comprised of all energy types, and just think back to your 101, Most critical for humans is the store of living biomass. With the rapid depletion of this chemical energy, the Earth is shifting back towards the inhospitable equilibrium of outer space with fundamental ramifications for the biosphere and humanity. Because there is no substitute or replacement energy for living biomass, like we're not going to reinvent life. I mean, people are trying in the test tubes and lab, but we'll see how far that goes. Because there's no substitute or replacement for the energy of living biomass, the remaining distance from equilibrium that will be required to support human life is unknown. He says it's unknown, but he's got some pretty compelling figures that say otherwise. Just like the upshot of my paper is like, okay, there's a lot of entropy in the atmosphere, but what does it mean? You know, and that's where we are right now. Let's figure it out. So I will show you a couple slides from the talk that I gave in Billings that are specifically taken from the Schramski paper. Let me get back to that.
Is this kind of why global warming will essentially lead to an ice age?
You might think of it that way. Global warming might lead to an ice age, like in the movie The Day After Tomorrow, maybe. Yeah, I mean, some climate models do predict that, yeah. But let's take a look. Conferences, 2015, SpawnCon, Billings. And there's a YouTube link for this video. You can go watch the whole thing. But what I want to show you is just jump right into Schramski. Okay, so Schramski basically shows the planet, and I was not a big fan of using the battery as an analogy, but when it comes down to it, you come back to what we were looking at previously. What do we have? Well, we've got our hydrocarbons going in along with our oxygen going in. That's chemistry, and in a battery you can think of as chemistry. Typically, there's nothing fundamentally that says a battery has to get hot in order to work. I mean, fundamentally, a heat engine has to get hot to work. I mean, if the heat engine does not get hot, it does not do any work. Batteries, on the other hand, there's no fundamental law that says a battery must get hot in order to work. Now, a battery is a resistor. There are resistive elements inside a battery, and any resistor is going to get hot. So in that sense, yeah, some heat is going to come off when the ions flow through the battery, but there's nothing fundamental that says a battery must reach some critical temperature in order to work. It's going to be different depending on the chemistry. So in a sense, his analogy of using all of the biomass chemical stores as a battery, it's not great, but it's not terrible either. So what he's showing is that humankind, and what is this? Well, this is our 500 exajoule per year diet draining that battery. And if you get a chance, I got a chance actually to go into Colstrip. This is basically what we're doing, and I was actually parked in a bus right there. Right down here. We were able to drive right down in, sit next to this is an 80-foot tall coal seam, and watch this machine take I think it was 5-ton scoops, about a 5-ton scoop every minute or so. Drop it into this truck, which is running 30, 40, maybe even 50 tons back up, and up on, being pulverized, sent on the cars, and then off to the Colstrip power plant 1 and 2. I was doing a little bit of that. These guys have a capacity of 2 gigawatts. So you can take that same, so that the 2 gigawatts goes straight into out. See, I didn't write it out specifically. The 2 gigawatts goes straight in. I'll write it like this: power equals delta Q over time. So in the case of Colstrip, we're looking at 2 gigawatts. So you could just take Colstrip and say, what is the entropy production of the Colstrip power plant? You know, so look at the heat, see what the how quickly is that happening, divide it by atmospheric temperature, and there you go. Okay. So what Schramski then goes on to say is that this is all of the biomass on planet Earth. There's two. So we talked previously about exajoules. Zetajoules is 10 to the 21st. Exa is 10 to the 18th. Let me just verify that. I think zeta. Yeah, 10 to the 21st. So there are 1,000 exajoules in a zetajoule, and this is basically the entire budget of this 2,000 plus this little tiny blip up here is the entire carbon budget on planet Earth. That's everything we could possibly burn. This 2,000 he mentions as not recoverable. That's little plankton that floated to the bottom of the ocean. That's stuff that the frackers just aren't going to get to. It would be like I don't know. It would be like getting at little tiny flecks of carbon that are buried under so much overburden. And let's just go here for a second. It's buried under so much of this stuff, it's just not worth your while. You're going to burn more energy getting to it than you're ever going to get out. The energy return on energy invested is actually negative. So that's what he means by recoverable. And here's the nuclear. It's actually a lot less. But then what he goes on to say is 2 zetajoules is the net energy flow of energy through the biosphere. So if you remember back to the figures, we had the biosphere over here, we had the technosphere over here. 2 zetajoules is the flow through the biosphere. That's how many photons are captured by photosystem 1, turned into a plant, something eats it, maybe it dies, turns into peat, turns into coal, whatever. That's the annual budget. 2 zetajoules per year. Well, is that a lot? Is that a little? Well, 2 zetajoules, as it turns out, is about 4 times our global energy consumption. So, yeah, there's some energy going into the bank, but we're burning through it at a rate that's 1/4 at which it's going into the bank. So that's the balance or the checkbook, if you will. Now here's the trajectory. So he shows that of the recoverable biomass, you've got 35 zetajoules total of recoverable, and he calls that basically in year 0. So 2,000 years ago, what were we doing? We were not mining oil, we were not mining coal, we were not fracking natural gas. We were still a lot of hunter-gatherers. We were just sort of getting into the agricultural age 2,000 years ago. So the 35 zetajoules that were sitting there had kind of been sitting there for a long time. There were not other species on this planet pulling biomass out from underneath the Earth's surface. So what he shows is that 2,000 years ago, there were 35 zetajoules of biomass on the planet, and then 1,000 years there were 32, and then what is this, to mid-1800s. I mean, here's where mining takes off in a big way. So you do this curve, and you're like, that is not a sustainable curve. It is nosediving, not to some nebulous thing. It's nosediving to zero. I mean, it's heading to no biomass at all left on planet Earth in the form of coal, oil, natural gas, or plants, animals living on the surface. I think I had a couple more Schramski slides.
You said annually there's 2 going in, but how long until that's a usable, viable source that we can use? Because the stuff we're using has been there.
Yeah, no, it's a great question. So of this, it's a great question. So of this 500 exajoules, some of very small amounts, maybe 1, 2, maybe 3 or 4% globally is actually solar tech, wind tech. The vast majority, well over half, 60, 70, maybe 80% is old biomass, old coal, old oil, old gas. Some of it, a little bit, is new biomass. I mean, people still burn wood, people still burn dung, people, if you remember from 102, there's even a plant in England that burns chicken poop for energy, for God's sake. So that's still biomass. So it's a combination. You're burning the old and the new, and that's kind of the whole point that I'm trying to get across here. Okay, now here's the Earth's population. It seems to be topping out. I think people are kind of like, whoa, time to figure this out. China's actually doing away with their one-child policy. They're having economic trouble as a result of it. This is the curve that is really most important in terms of human civilization stability or sustainability, what have you. The energy per capita, I'm sorry, I think I got my curves reversed. The blue is population, and there it is in billions. The red is total energy consumption. That is starting to peak, which means that each one of us has less energy at his or her disposal. Now, is that a good thing? Is that a bad thing? It depends. It depends who you are. It could be a great thing if I got a nice loan from the bank here and put a whole bunch of insulation in my house and put a whole bunch of solar thermal in my house, and I no longer have to pump natural gas from a frac source into my house. I'm going to live comfortably in my house, warm, clean, dry, etc., without draining that earth battery. So this could be a good thing with the curve going down. It's less energy per person with a high quality of life. It could also be a terrible thing if there's no oil left and all of a sudden there's no money flowing into the oil companies, and now there's no money, and now people don't have money to purchase goods and services that they need to stay comfortable lives. So double-edged sword there. Could be a great thing if we're becoming more energy efficient, cars with more miles per gallon, like I said, better insulation, what have you. Very bad thing if it's just poverty, if it's just less to go around and a smaller pie all around. Here's the next number, and then I want to wrap up with the number 4. I think we can pull it off here. So this he calls this thing omega. It's a little, and he does it. It's like it's the last letter in the Greek alphabet. This is the end of biomass on planet Earth. At year 0, 2015 years ago, at the rate we were consuming, there were over 65,000 years of biomass left to be consumed. But then our consumption rate increased. If you fast forward to the year 500, well, you still got 58,000 years of biomass left. Fast forward to 1300, well, shoot, there's still plenty in the bank, but 25,000, civilization could continue at this rate for 25,000 years. The plague hits, that's the plague. So there, 1/3 of Earth's population dies, and so the biomass consumption rate flattens to some extent. He then zooms in. Here we are at 1500. Gets up into the 1960s, and so this is the same scale. I mean, this is 10,000 right here. This is 18. This is the number of years of biomass left on planet Earth at our current consumption rate. Now, if you remember your NRGY 101 and 102 lectures, we did some modeling. We sort of, looked at CO2 production, human population. We talked a lot about the curvature of the line. So is this curving in the right direction or the wrong one for sustainability? It's actually curving in the right direction. We need this curve to flatten out. It has, it's going to be, we're going to have a heck of a time. We're not making new coal. We're not making new oil. We're not making new natural gas. I don't see us, able to sort of like turn into some kind of J and have it turn up. But what we absolutely must do for global sustainability and for our fossil fuel reserves is flatten this sucker out. So, okay, so maybe we hit 500, but we just stay on that 500 forever. Does that make sense? The number on this line is the number of years into the future that we have biomass still on Earth. Biomass is coal, oil, natural gas, and every living, breathing thing on the surface of the planet right now. It's the cheeseburger sitting over there in the cafeteria.
Well,
it's the blade of grass sitting out in the yard.
Correct. Because in our book it said like coal was going to run out a lot quicker than oil. In Energy 101 book, it gave a list of how many.
No, coal is predicted our current rate. You can go to worldometers and look at that. Yeah. I think he had those two reversed. Yeah, so 38 years to the end of oil. Coal, 150,000 days. You can turn that into years.
Okay, so wait a minute. So it says 38 years we'll run out of oil?
Yeah.
Okay, so but that graph that you just showed saying that we have more than 38 years, didn't you say it was like 18?
Yeah, that's all biomass. Yeah. That means you start cooking through what is coming in right now.
So yeah, I don't care about that. I care about that. Okay.
So the authors of these papers, so coal, we're looking at 400 years left of coal, and that is not that's not too far off. Right, this graph right here shows 1,000 years left of all biomass, and Worldometer says 400 years left of coal. So the numbers are pretty dang close. Factor
I will
two.
be 80 years old when we run out of oil.
Okay.
Like,
Thanks for letting us know. Okay, so that's the big picture on old versus new biomass, and that is really what I wanted to cover here with point number 3. So hopefully we got that. Okay, now I'm going to take a break, and I'm going to get through the last bit, the economics of wood chipping, as best I can.